Hi, I'm Mike Rooney. I'm a plein air artist from Topsail Island, and today's free art lesson is on basic palette skills. What I'd like to show you today is how you should set your palette up. If you don't have a usual way of doing it, use my way for a while until you get really comfortable with another way. But I teach a lot of workshops, and I realized that as I was teaching the workshops, a lot of people didn't even have basic palette skills. They just take the paint and put it all over the palette in different places every time, and they really don't have a set amount of colors or a preference. And I realized that in the workshops I needed to start covering some palette skills, so that's what I'd like to do today for the free art lesson. I'll show you here, this is a palette setup that I made, a pochade box that I made out of some scrap wood, but this is my palette, and I set it up the same way every single time, and that's the key. And I always say that, Stevie Wonder, the only reason he can play piano blind is because the keys never move. So, if you are squeezing out a color in a different position every time, you are really messing yourself up. Where if they're in the same position every single time, you basically don't have to think about dipping in the color. You know exactly what position on the clock they are, and you can concentrate on the canvas, which is where you should be concentrating. So let's look at how I've got mine set up. And you don't have to set it up this way, but if you put orange here, you need to put orange there every single time. Don't have orange here one day and the next day it's down in the right corner. Don't take your yellow and move it around. Now what I've done is I use a kind of a split complement or a split primary palette with a couple yellows, couple reds. In some cases, I've got one red today, a couple blues, and then my secondary colors across the top, and a big string or big worm of titanium white to the right. I use magenta to do all my drawing and my underpainting with, Naples yellow, cadmium yellow medium, any kind of red. I use a primary red. I don't like to use alizarin because it's got too much blue in it. I can make that blue, so why carry around two reds when I can make what I need with this? Then I use sky blue or cerulean blue with white in it, ultramarine. Then my secondary is cadmium orange, sap green, and ultramarine violet, and titanium white. I set it up this way every single time. And I'm basically going warmth here, warm and getting cooler as it goes up the palette, and then my secondaries are across the top. So I think that the important thing also is to be sure that you clean this area right here. I notice that a lot of people in the workshops, they make all these piles of color and they don't clean the palette off with a palette knife. You can take this and a paper towel, and anytime this palette gets too full of colors, they start touching. What happens is you might bring a pile of nice warm red over here, and then all of a sudden you're making a nice green for your grass over here. Well, what happens when they touch, you start mixing around in it, they're making complements. The green is touching the red, which grays it out. And the key to really, I think, successful painting is to have nice, clean color. So, if you've got a pile here of, say, purple, and then there's a pile of orange real close to it, it's real easy for it to get mixed up right here. And look how muddy it gets. So it's real important. And you say, Mike, you've got a really small area here. I don't need a big area. I can scrape this off every time the palette gets too full. I can scrape it off. And sometimes people don't even know this. You can just scrape it off with a knife. Now this is plexiglass. Yours may be made out of glass or wood. You scrape all the paint off that you can get off with your palette knife, and then you put a little bit of thinner down and wipe the rest off and get it good and clean. Don't have any of this color right there, because what that would do is that would make a complement, that green, that would dull your green down. So you don't want that. So make sure that plexiglass or your palette is really clean. Keep the piles separated. Now another thing to do is to be sure to work all your lights. Like when you're laying in the painting, make sure that you do all your warm lights at the same time, and try to do your darks at a different time. That way you don't have darks and lights all on this small palette touching each other. It's way easier to have all the darks lined up, paint all the darks on the painting, scrape all that off, and then do the lights, put the lights on there. and you're not going to have grays. You're going to have this beautiful color, really colorful darks, really colorful whites. Scrape all that off and get it good and clean. That was for your underpainting. Scrape all that off, get it as clean as you can, and then start putting pure color again. Anytime it starts getting grayed or muddied on this palette right here, it's going to end up on here, and that's what you don't want. Another thing that a lot of people didn't know, and we'll finish with this, is that you can scrape this stuff here, all these colors, and you can put them in a pile. You can see this pile here that I've got is a pile of scraped color, and it's great for just putting, I always put that in the very far right corner right before the white, that anytime I want to gray something down, let's say I've put some orange down on this right here and I want to tone it down, it's too chromatic, it's too orange, I'll take some of that gray of the scrapings and I'll put that gray in that orange and just mix it around, and it'll knock back that orange. It'll take the edge off that orange, because you can see it's really, really intense coming out of the tube, and you don't see anything. Even now it's autumn outside, you don't see leaves that color, but you take that color right there, put it on, and then you take some of that gray, which is a conglomeration of all those colors you scraped off, put just a touch of it in there, and it'll knock that orange back, and it'll look just like those trees outside. So I hope you've enjoyed this mini lesson on Palette 101 skills. I think it'll keep your colors cleaner. You don't need as big a palette. I see people walking around with these big giant palettes. You don't need that if you just use a palette knife and scrape it every once in a while. Now you can see more stuff on me on my blog. It's MikeRooneyStudios.blogspot.com.